I am daydreaming about dragons. This is Judd. And I'm thinking about something pretty specific gaming wise. Got a bunch of books laid out in front of me. Got a notebook in front of me because I wrote down some thoughts on what I want to do next. And it is simple, but it kind of gets complicated in a hurry, doesn't it? So, how do you know if your character knows something? I've been doing this D&D skill checks Twitter thing where just about every day, not just about, every day at 9, my Twitter goes beep and sends out a response to a D&D skill check. And it's like, it could be something cool, or it could be thinking about the gaminess of it, or it could just be a cool little fiction, like, short bite hors d'oeuvre, if you will. And some of them are knowledge checks. And it's like, does your character know this? And clearly some of them are things I wouldn't call for a skill check for, right? I mean, sometimes that just happens. And that's cool. Different people do it different ways. And it's just a bot. It's a bot on Twitter, right? So let's not judge. Let's not judge too much. There are no people behind this. It's just a bot. Some brilliant person made the bot, but there's not an actual GM. So it got me thinking about character knowledge, right? Because a lot of these are, does your character remember this thing? And of course it says that, because when I looked up skills in D&D 5th edition, Arcana and History, your intelligence history check measures your ability to recall historical events. Your intelligence Arcana check measures your ability to recall lore about spells. Which is interesting, because it doesn't have to be memorization. It can be, did your character ever read that book? Did your character ever cross paths with that book? And how? And your intelligence plus the Arcana skill can be kind of a way to gauge how much your character has had the ability to study and go over things, and how broad and how hard they studied. And I guess that is just a fancy way of saying recall. But recall makes it sound like, oh man, yeah, I knew where the Lich's Phylactery was. I read that book, back in Wizard College, but I just don't remember. Like, it makes it sound like the character, like it really is a banana peel slipping wizard moment, instead of, oh yeah, no, no one reads that book. That book is locked away. I couldn't read it as an apprentice. So I was thinking about different ways to do this, because when you go to Moldvay and you go to BX Essentials and you say, hey, how do I know if my character knows something? There's not much there, which is cool, because I think those games, the thing that they're supposed to do is they give you the bare bones, and then you're supposed to grow beyond it, right? You're supposed to game design your way out of that hole as a GM. And you could game design your way out with rulings, not rules, right? As the old OSR saying goes. But that doesn't mean that as the GM you just have to make a call. There are different ways I think we can do this, right? So, and I think those techniques, I think saying rulings, not rules, is basically saying you use techniques, use good techniques. But that's tough, man. That's like putting someone up to bat in a baseball game and being like, well, hit the ball. They're just throwing it 100 miles an hour. Just swing faster. Swing faster, dude. And that's, keep your eye on the ball and swing faster. And that might not be helpful. So I wanted to think about that a little bit. About what are different ways we can know if a character knows something. And I think the easiest way is just to ask the player. Right? Does your character know that? I don't know. Do they? If there's no place for languages on the character sheet, and they say, yeah, I speak Draconic, be like, oh cool, how did you speak that? Oh well, my I'm a dwarf, and my uncle was a hostage, a dragon kidnapped my uncle, and my uncle was in the retinue of a dwarven prince, and the dragon kidnapped them and ransomed them, and then took the ransom and put it into its hoard. And my uncle spent like 10 years with this dwarven prince and a dragon, and he learned Draconic. And he never really talked about it because it was kind of a tough time for him. That's cool. That's a nice little detail. That's fun. Now, I could see how that could be abused, right? Totally. I see how that could go poorly. But I think there's something to that. It could be fun, too. And yeah, Pupper Cat, absolutely. Players can nerf it. Absolutely. Character can just speak every language known to man. But, how do you speak demonic, If they make up something cool that fits in the world, bully on them. And if they bring back something that was in their characters, kind of history or has been brought up, even better. Hey, the dragon cult's rites are just about to start. You have no idea what to do. Oh, no, I know what to do. I was brought up in a dragon cult, remember? My parents were dragon cultists. I ran away. Oh, that's right. You know exactly what to do. It's just like going back to Dragon Church. Oh, that's interesting. It's cool if that, don't you, hey, GM, don't you realize that's why we sent him in? Because he grew up in Dragon Church, in a dragon cult? Oh, now it makes sense. I didn't even think about that. Cool. So, it can be something where they edit it in and say, hey, my uncle, he taught me some Draconic. I know enough to get myself into trouble. Or it could be that it's already been established, It's already there. And I think there's also room for the GM to say, well, it's a little more difficult than that. Draconic is a really difficult language. And your uncle was teaching it to you secondhand, and he was wading his way through PTSD to do it. And he did not teach you proper high Draconic. So I need you to make an intelligence check to make sure that you don't really offend him. And if you fail, then in the next course of the conversation, I want you to misspeak really brutally. And we can play from there. And if you don't misspeak, then I'll misspeak you. But the dragon's going to take something the wrong way. Interesting stuff, And of course, we can just go with the GM decides. Do you know it? Nah, I don't think you know it. But I think it's more interesting to ask them. I just feel like that's a neat thing. Say, hey, they're speaking Draconic. Do you know Draconic? Or the goblins have tied you up. They're speaking in Goblin. Do you know Goblin? How did you learn Goblin? Well, my father was a caravan, merchant, as I had told you, or it was a guard and a caravan merchant, and they used to have to pay off Goblin, bandits, and my dad used to be the one to go and talk to them and be like, hey guys, I've got a bunch of stuff for you. Don't attack the caravan. It's better if you don't die, and you just take this bit of silver and go about your life. So. Interesting. Oh, that's an interesting story. Now we've got some story. Now we've got some background. And I think that's kind of neat. And it allows, the more info the players have, the more, it gets them more and more trouble, If your character is infiltrating the dragon cult and they know the dragon rites, suddenly they can get even deeper into the cult and find out what's going on. And what's interesting isn't necessarily the players trying to figure out what the heck the dragon cult is doing. What's interesting to me very often is, what are they going to do once they find out what they're doing? What do they do with that info? There are these folks on the fringe. What do they do? That's interesting to me. So very often giving them the knowledge or asking them how they know it, finding out, and then having them get into the mix is more interesting and more fun and more dangerous. Now you're knee deep in rites. You're knee deep in the dragon rites, and they hand you the dagger, and there's a human, from the Order of St. George who you have to sacrifice. What do you do now? You're surrounded by cultists. You remember these rites. You've watched your uncles and your brothers and your sisters, bleed sacrifices to Tiamat before. Now what do? You're totally having flashbacks. Uh-oh. And that's an interesting moment. It's an interesting moment to ask your players to inhabit. I love it. So, I know that I play games where it's easy to figure out if your player knows something. There are ways to roll dice. But I was talking to a buddy of mine, and the cool thing about having Burning Wheel in my world and playing it and loving it is I've got it. I've got it. It's here. I don't need every game to be it. I don't need every game to answer the questions that Burning Wheel answers. I don't need every game to do what it does and to answer all the questions its mechanics answer for me. I can appreciate a game like, Moldvay or BXE, where it's like, hey, you're going to have to technique your way through this. Because I think that's a lot of fun. I see it. I get it. I'm looking forward to trying it. And yeah, that's what I've been thinking about, character knowledge. I will put a link to the I've got these moments. They've got these thing on Twitter where you can gather up a bunch of different tweets and you can put them in a moment. So I've got the moment for the skill checks, and I will put the skill checks moment for Twitter up, and you'll be able to look at it, see what I'm talking about, different skill checks, how they work, and let me know what you think. If you've got any thoughts on how you find out if players know things, let me know. I think my answer is a little dungeon worldy. Might not be old school enough for you. That's okay. Let me know. Let me know that I'm being a story game hippie. I can take it. Just say it with love and respect. I'll respond with love and respect. We'll get it going. But let me know what you think. Let me know how you can figure out if players know things. Do you just make a ruling? Do you ask them? How do you come to that? And we've talked about that for a long time. We're over 12 minutes, and I want to get to the Inspiration Goat. So let's see what the Inspiration Goat can bring us today. Inspiration Goat, bleat at me. What you got?
Let's see what the Inspiration Goat's got. All right. Inspiration Goat has brought me today the Mr. Miracle graphic novel by Tom King. I don't know if you're reading this. It is a recent run on Mr. Miracle by Tom King, who's also running on Batman right now, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But what I want to talk about this run on Mr. Miracle is the humor in it, because it's not goofy humor. It is humor derived from taking the premise of what's going on seriously and seeing that it's surreal. And I recognized it as kind of the humor that goes on when I find at the gaming table when me and my friends play. Because it's not Monty Python humor, right? It's not goofy. It kind of comes from taking things seriously, right? If we're really the Mr. Miracle run is really dark. It starts with Mr. Miracle having survived I'm not spoiling anything here. It's the first couple pages, and maybe this will grab you, or maybe this will make you say, "Hey, this isn't the run for me." But this run on Mr. Miracle starts with Mr. Miracle having survived a suicide attempt. Okay, which is really interesting for someone who's an escape artist, right? He literally just escaped from death, which I think is fascinating. But that aside, there's humor in it that is derived directly from how surreal it is that there are these folks who are gods dressed as superheroes standing around. There's one scene where they're in a living room having a trial or talking about a trial. And it's so surreal, and he lets it be weird. And it's really cool. And I feel like that's the humor that tends to come out of the gaming that I see. In that if you take the premise of the game seriously, not like, when I say I take the premise of the game seriously, I don't want people to think that I'm thinking about something thematic, or we're saying we're looking our noses down at anything. It's not that. It's if you really think about the fact that we're in this dank hole of goblin warrens, and the paladin is getting into an argument with the cat familiar about who should sit first watch. It's funny, right? It's this funny, surreal, ridiculous situation. So if you look at the ridiculousness of what's going on, and take it seriously, and just let it be, and let it simmer, and really be in it, it can be really funny. And that's the kind of humor I was seeing in the Mr. Miracle comic, and I find that that's the type of humor that happens in game, where someone is reacting to what's going on, and what's going on is kind of bizarre, and you're not trying to be funny, it's just funny. Because life sometimes is dark and ridiculous and funny. And if the games represent, if the games have ways of being like life, then there we go. It just ends up being funny. And I just don't want anyone who's GMing or new to GMing to feel like they have pressure to be funny. Because it's not that. I don't set up jokes. I'm not like a comedian writing a bit. I think it's more in the moment and letting a situation be. And letting the players be in it and have an emotional reaction to something, and it can just be kind of wonderfully ridiculous. And that's, I don't know, there's something to that. There's something I really like about that. Sip of coffee time. Hold on. So check it out. Tom King's run on Mr. Miracle has been amazing. I've only read the first graphic novel. I've got to read more. I know they meet Darkseid in a future issue. I saw him on the cover. I'm excited to see how that goes. It's dark. There are themes of suicide, and so it's buyer beware a little bit. But I think they handle it in a really cool way, and it's well done. If you're into Batman, he's having a stellar run on Batman right now. I would start with the War of Jokes and Riddles, which is Batman telling Catwoman about what he thinks was the biggest mistake he ever made as Batman. And it's during a gang war in which the Joker and the Riddler have pretty much divvy up just about everybody from Batman's rogues gallery in Gotham in this huge gang war. And they go to town. And it's cool. It's really cool. And Tom King actually manages to make Kite Man an interesting villain. So if you're interested in that, how does he do that? Check it out. Let me know what you think. And if there are any comic books you're reading right now, feel free to drop me a line, especially if they are feeding into your gaming and inspiring you. If you want to tell me a funny story about something funny that happened at your table that kind of fits that description or doesn't, please let me know. I think of I thought of humor at the table and how it can happen, because there are always those memes that go around where somebody says, this is how a game starts, and it's a picture of Fellowship of the Ring movie, and then it's like, this is how the game actually is, and it's Monty Python. And I feel like my games are never Monty Python, but they are funny. We laugh a lot. There is humor, but it's definitely not Monty Python humor. And it's definitely not the quoting of Monty Python quotes. So, I don't know. And you know what? I feel like I've digested the Holy Grail entirely by at the table quotes. So I think it's on the Netflix right now. I should probably rewatch it and see what it brings about. So anyway, if you've got some comics you're digesting, drop me a line about them. You can do it on Twitter. You can hit me on email. I've got some nice emails lately. My email is judd, Karlman, Karlman, @gmail.com. You can hit me up on Twitter. The links aren't going to be up immediately. I should put them up tonight or tomorrow. This is going on a little later than I'd like, and I hope you all are set up for a good week. And the winter chill isn't too bad for you. Stay warm. Get some sunlight. Process some vitamin D. And hopefully I will talk to you on Wednesday with the Reply Show. All right? Have a good one.